So what do you think of Tiny Wings?
Alright, so Tiny Wings is pretty good. It's only got one gameplay mechanic, which is when you put your finger on the screen, your bird gains gravity and falls down, and then when you release it, he loses gravity and rises up. But it basically translates to real physics, because you always push down when you're going down a hill, and then release when you get to the very bottom of the hill.
Just try to get the most boost.
Yeah, I had some people who had tried to let him get partially up the next hill before they release, and that doesn't work out at all, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, it's a really fun game. But beyond that, there doesn't really seem to be a point to it, so replayability might be a problem.
Right. The goal is really in the end just to get as far as you can. You launch onto a new island, and the islands last maybe, in terms of gameplay time, I'd say what, like 15 seconds maybe?
Something like that.
Which I would say probably the standard player is going to make it somewhere between Island 3 and Island 6. So I mean,
That's
really,
right.
even just one round of gameplay does not last very long. So I mean, it is ideal for a quick play.
Another thing is, your game lasts until the sun goes down, which basically means once you can see it on screen descending, then the only real way that I've found to outrun it is to actually get to the end of your island and launch to the next island. So if you're not close to the end of your island when the sun starts to go down, the game's basically over.
Right, yeah, that does not act as a real-time gauge of how of game progress. So, what makes this app so relevant is the fact that it dethroned Angry Birds from the #1 top paid slot on the App Store charts here to become the #1 app, and now has been there for over a week. But just dethroning Angry Birds is a big deal.
I can see that because with the iPhone, the iPod, the games that people want to play are the games that are more casual, that don't really have a long-term goal, that are just fun to play and kind of cute. And this game is very cute. And the mechanic is so simple that it is kind of fun.
Right, my biggest issue with this, and this is my issue with these types of games in general, is that I personally prefer games with more depth. However, for the casual gamer, I think this is ideal. I mean, it really is.
It is.
To try to prevent the repetitiveness, you get a new set of islands. The islands change every day that you play. So every time you log in, your islands are different, and they remain the same until the end of that day. It's an interesting mechanic. So what you can do when you're trying to achieve your objectives, because you have a list of objectives that you're trying to achieve before you hit the next nest, is you can kind of map out your islands, get to learn the patterns and things like that. And some of the islands lend themselves a little bit better to certain mechanics than others. They'll have more coins or less coins, or
some of them have steeper hills so you can fly up more. Some of them have shallower hills so you can get more distance. And they have a very Dr. Seuss feel to them because they're basically like striped colors, and the colors get kind of crazy.
I mean, overall, I would give this game, I don't know, how do we rate games? We haven't decided on that yet. I'd give this game like a thumbs up.
Yeah, sure. I'd give it a thumbs up. I mean, I'd play the game. I wouldn't play it long.
I've went back to it more than I thought I would. I have. Okay, so that's our first game for the week. Our second game is Shadow Era. And your phone was not actually able to, or your device was not actually able to run it because it only supports third generation devices or higher, which yours is not. So you played it via the computer.
Yeah.
And I played it on the iPhone 4. That is one of the nice things about this game is it is multi-platform. It's available on the computer, iPhone 4, or I think iPhone 3GS. iPod Touch, and iPad.
On the computer, it's not a downloadable game. It's playable through the web browser.
It uses Unity, the Unity engine, which is something that a lot of games are using right now. I don't know. What do you think of it as a card game? It is essentially a collectible card game, similar to things like Magic the Gathering and World of Warcraft. Personally, I would say it's closest to the World of Warcraft card game, which I don't think you've played, right?
I've never played.
But that's what I would say it's closest to. You have your classes and your starting hero. They have a certain amount of life. You're trying to take them down to 0. You summon allies to fight with. They do most of the attacking. And then from your hand, you can cast spells only during your turn and other gameplay abilities and things like that. I don't know. What did you think of it?
It was alright. I never faced an opponent that gave a greater reward than 100 experience and 20 gold.
Alright, did you play any people or just the computer?
Just the computer.
What's interesting is I do think the game it does have some good mechanics when you get to the multiplayer. Like there's already been some deck designs that have come up to the top and then got squashed back down by another deck, and it's cool. It's pretty nice. On the iPhone version, it lets you, if you want, you can buy starter decks and expansion packs to build to start ramping up your collection there. the different classes do have a different feel because each class comes with specific abilities, cards that can only be played by that class. You know, I mean, it's an interesting game, and I have had some fun with it. I'm a big fan of those collectible card game type games. The biggest issue, though, and you probably didn't experience this from your time, is right now they only have 2 rare cards. If you buy booster packs, what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself getting the same rare over and over and over and over and over, which is kind of frustrating. That said, they do have an in-game system that lets you sell your cards to a merchant, an online merchant, for their in-game currency, which is just, I believe, gold or something like that. And then you can buy other cards for the game right from that merchant, and the card stock is based on what people have sold and bought. I don't know, I had a lot of fun with that game. I'd say it's the closest to a collectible card game implementation that I've seen. The only other one kind of comparable that I can think of is Moonga, but I would describe that as more of a micro card game.
Yeah. The one thing that does slightly annoy me about Shadow Era is that when playing, you have to go through each step of each turn, and your opponent has to go through each step of each turn, which sounds like a very small thing, and it is. It's a very, very small thing. It's almost negligible, but it is like it's like a 3-second period where you just have to wait. Can be kind of annoying after like the 40th time you've done it.
The most frustrating mechanic to me, and I have had my share of frustrating mechanics with the game, but that said, I mean, it's still a very good game, in my opinion. But the most frustrating mechanic that I've seen is that there are no instants, because they had to keep it turn-based because of just how that interaction occurs.
You found that frustrating? I didn't mind that. It seemed like just part of the game mechanic. You can only do things on your turn.
It's just, to me, it seems limiting. That mechanic itself seems limiting.
It completely changes the strategy. Like, you can't rely on yourself to be able to interrupt your opponent like you can in other card games that you and I might have played. Right. You have to kind of plan out your steps so that on your turn you accomplish as much as possible. I wasn't playing people, I was only playing the computer, but I found that once you establish control, the game is yours. There's no way that you're ever going to lose ever again.
That is very much true. What starting class did you choose?
It had to be a mage.
Oh yeah, there's also Shadow and Human, and there are certain cards you can only play as a Shadow character, and certain cards you can only play as a Human character. To add in between the classes as well. And that's, you're right, once you've established control of this game, either through creature domination, meaning you have like 3+ creatures, or you have direct damage to the point where you've burnt all of his creatures off, it is pretty much over. I mean, that is a big flaw.
And that's what I was going to
say. Another one big flaw, because I know we've been going on about this one, so we should wrap it up. Another big flaw with this game that I've seen is, as far as I can tell, and I don't know if it's any different on the computer, I'll have to check it out, is that you cannot connect to a specific player to play. Like, I could not, as far as I can tell, actually just straight out connect to you to play.
I haven't experimented with these.
Another flaw in this version of the game is, and hopefully the developer fixes this because it is a major problem, is there's a ranking scale in multiplayer. If you win, you go up. If you lose, you go down. And he put in a safety net because, you know, on multiplayer devices or things like that, connections aren't always stable, so sometimes people drop out or things like that. So if the game ends too quickly, rankings aren't affected, and you don't gain experience or money or anything like that. People will look at their starting hand, and if they don't like their starting hand, they'll just quit. And that's a really flawed mechanic of this game. It's really frustrating, too. If you were to do that, the only way you can compete then, too, because then when you play somebody, you know they've got a great hand, it's for you to do the same thing, which now creates a mechanic where everybody's just dropping games all the time. So hopefully the developer fixes that. So I guess that about wraps it up, right?
Yeah, I think so.